Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Dr. Phyllis Curtis Tweed. I'm the Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs at Bermuda College, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the third in our reading literacy series, and this one is called School Readiness. I'm going to quickly share my screen here so you can see. Let me know if you can't see it. So this is school readiness, and this presentation is actually a partnership between Literacy How, and you'll learn more about Literacy How in just a minute, Bermuda College, and the Department of Education. Now, it may be clear why we would have an organization called Literacy How working with us on a reading literacy program and the Department of Education, but you may wonder, why is Bermuda College doing this? Well, let me tell you. First of all, Bermuda College is your community college. And part of our mission is to promote excellence in education. So that means that includes providing programming, bringing together local and overseas experts to help us to make sure that we're on that path, and also partnering with the community to improve pathways to success. Now, if we want our children to succeed, we have to intervene early. It's not enough for us to lament about what skills they may or may not have by the end of middle school, which is on its way out, or high school, but we need to establish that path to success early. And that is why we're talking about reading literacy, and we're talking about P1 students. So I'm really excited that you are here. And here's our agenda. I just welcomed you. We're going to do some introductions. We're going to have a presentation from Dr. Margie Gillis. We will have our panel talk to us about school readiness, give some tips and activities. We'll have a discussion with them, and then we'll have plenty of opportunity for questions and answers. Here's a screen that shows our presenters, but I'm going to ask them to quickly introduce themselves, starting with Mrs. Sherry Lee Bucci.
Good evening, everyone. Well, you know my name is Sherry Lee Bucci, and I am the Assistant Director of Early Childhood Education at the Department of Education. I'm also a mother of two. So I've gone the journey with my children through birth onto college. I have one that's still in university and one that has graduated.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert.
My name is McKees Gilbert. Good evening. I teach P1 at Elliott Primary, and I've also taught P2. And I'm excited to be here with you this evening.
Dr. Gillis. Unmute.
I'm Margie Gillis, and President CEO of an organization called Literacy How in Connecticut. And I'm happy to be here with all of my wonderful friends and partners from Bermuda.
Ms. Manderson?
Good evening, everyone. I am Kimberly Manderson. I am the Acting Education Officer for Reading in the Department of Education, formerly a reading teacher at the Delaware Middle School for 10 years. And I'm thrilled to be here and to see you here tonight.
Ms. Pearman?
Good evening. My name is Latoya Pearman. I'm a parent of 3 public school students and not far off from school readiness. I have a P1, P5, and an M2. So excited to be here.
Thank you. Mrs. Trott.
Good evening. My name is Kamalia Trott. I am the Education Officer, Early Childhood Special Ed. I work for the Department of Education, and I'm excited to have this conversation with our parents about getting your little ones ready for us or for any system.
Excellent. And as I said, I'm Dr. Phyllis Curtis Tweed. And in case you wondered about my background, my training is in psychology, but prior to that, I actually taught school. I was certified for K through 12. Never taught the K part, but I taught everybody else from middle school on up to graduate school. And I taught foreign language in the lower grade levels and psychology in college. So I feel like I have had a lot of great opportunities to learn about and to learn from my students and to teach. And it's really exciting for me to be a part of what I think is a great and really important effort here. Now, before we get into the presentations, I'd like to know who we have in our audience. And so we're going to put out a very brief poll for you to tell us who you are. Parent, godparent, other relative, including grandparents, aunts, uncles. Are you a teacher, administrator, or other? So I'm launching the poll now. And please go ahead and give us an answer. Okay, so we are at 100% here. I'm going to share the results. So you can see that we have a preponderance of teachers in the audience, 64%. A lot of parents at 22%, a few administrators at 5%. Other, we're not sure quite other is, but maybe you'll tell us in the chat box. No godparents. But you know, this poll, it strikes me, only allowed you to select one item, one category. So I'm willing to bet that there are teachers out there who are also parents or godparents or other relatives of other young children. So we're glad that you're here. Thank you so much. And we're going to go right ahead and get started. As I mentioned, the first presentation is going to be from Dr. Margie Gillis, who is going to talk about a bit about neuroscience and brain development.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tweed. And can you all see my screen okay? Excellent. So I'm going to talk very briefly because we have quite a stellar lineup of experts here this evening, and I want to make sure everyone has a chance to share their expertise and their wisdom. I am a special education teacher by training, and that's my background. And about 15 or 20 years ago, I shifted gears from teaching children to teaching teachers. And so the work that I and my team of 10 wonderful mentors do is coach teachers in their classrooms. And I am not a neuroscientist, so I'm going to share what I've learned from reading the research and studying the research on all aspects of development, but the brain research is what I want to focus on just for a few minutes this evening to set the stage for our conversation. And I want to begin by just saying that early brain development is amazing. The birth to 5 development of the brain is about 95% of the brain develops in those first 5 years, which is not to say that more things don't happen after age 5, but those first 5 years are very, very important. And everything matters as the brain is developing. The visual and the auditory systems are developing. We're developing how we think, how we use our brain to solve problems. Certainly language development is a very important part of the brain's development, and I'm going to speak a little bit more about that, as well as our social and emotional development. And we're going to touch on all of these areas, but primarily I think we'll touch on the language and the social and emotional development of the brain and how it is important in preparing our children. I will say also that I have 3 grown children and 3 young grandchildren, and this is the oldest grandchild, who is now 7 and who is an avid reader, I'm happy to say. But she started at this point at 9 months, you know, or even before, looking at books and listening to books being read and having a lot of language surrounding her. And I'm going to play a 2-minute video that I think says a lot about what you as parents can do to support the brain development, you know, before your child enters school and beyond. So hopefully you can hear this video, and then I'll just share a few thoughts.
People have studied how parents and their children interact from a behavioral standpoint for 30, 40 years. But you could only wonder what's going on inside the baby's brain.
Did you just switch it?
Now, for the first time, we can actually visualize functional activity with the MAG machine. Off the baby brain is coming a literal tsunami of data. We can create a movie of the brain reacting as parents talk to their baby.
Oh, he got the bunny.
What really makes us human is the fact that we are social creatures.
Oh, there's more bubbles.
We're proving that babies need social stimulation to learn. The social brain is the gate for learning.
Down.
When Francesca's in front of Lamarcus and she's talking,
All clap together.
the motor systems that will eventually be able to talk are activated.
Pia, pia, piano, 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 pia, pia, piano.
But then we have her do something asocial. She looks down at her cell phone. She's not talking anymore. No auditory signal, no social signal. It's just gone. This is Lamarcus's brain.
Stimulating their brain to see the science behind it. That's mind blowing.
This is my baby's brain.
Yeah.
And it's working. And
Yeah.
it's developing. And soon he's going to be talking with his sister.
Everything that you're doing with the baby, you say thank you, is building that brain. And it's the two of you who are turning it on.
We talk a lot.
You do.
It's clear.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Like my daughter says, kiss your brain.
Yeah, kiss your brain. That's a great phrase. Well, kiss his brain. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. This is amazing.
I love that. I love that video. It's short, but it makes very important points. The brain is developing because of the social interaction, right? And we know that children now are surrounded with devices and, you know, opportunities to interact with those devices, but there's no substitute for a caregiver, a sibling, a parent, somebody who's socializing, who's talking to and interacting with that child. And I know our experts will talk more about that. It's also really important to say that we're preparing our children in these early years to get ready to learn to read. We're not teaching them to read in those early years, but we're laying the foundation so that when they go to P1, they will also add so that they'll learn those foundational skills that will take them to reading. We are not wired as a species to read. We are wired to learn and acquire language and speak and listen. It's the job of the teacher actually to prepare a child and get them ready to do this very important thing that will carry them through life, and that is learning to read and write. Just a couple more points. You may have heard of a study by Hart and Risley that showed that there was a 30 million word gap between children who were on welfare and living in poverty and children in professional homes, where there was a lot of conversation, a lot of rich conversation. And that 30 million word gap is just a cumulative quantitative gap in the number of words that children hear from birth to age 3. And what we know is that gap will widen if we don't continue to speak with and interact with our children. Vocabulary matters a great deal in terms of our children's academic success. And the last thing I want to share is just this whole idea of neuroscience and education. A very famous researcher from France, Stanislas Dehaene, talks about the importance of parents and educators understanding what reading changes in a child's brain. As a child learns to read, you can see the connections forming in the brain, and the increased knowledge of these circuits will actually help our teachers better understand what it is that they should be doing in classrooms to facilitate this learning and this development. And on that note, I will turn it back over to Dr. Tweed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gillis. And that last point is a great segue into our next, the next portion of this presentation, which has to do with school readiness. So how do we know, what do we do to make sure that children are ready to learn, that they're ready to enter school? So our panelists are going to actually talk about that issue and provide some tips and activities. And so let's start with Mrs. Bucci.
Good evening again. So we are familiar with when children are getting ready to go to, used to be big school, but primary school, a lot of talk around getting ready, being ready. Is your child ready? Or I hope they're ready. And it's important to think about that transition and that journey that they're on, moving from preschool or childcare into primary school. And it's a really, it's a big step. It's an exciting step. And so I've heard the word ready, but I've also heard the word prepare. And so think about your child going on a journey. They're journeying into primary school. And so we want them to have what they need to have a smooth transition into primary school. And we also want the teachers to be prepared or ready for the children. So the teachers need to be ready, the schools need to be ready, and our parents are preparing and helping their child to be ready. And one of the points that Dr. Gillis talked about was that relationship piece. So part of preparing is really connecting with your child's teacher, with your child's school, and also that social emotional piece in terms of dealing with any kind of expectations. Maybe you're driving by the school and you're pointing and say, that's where you're going to school, or perhaps even their siblings are already at the school. So preparing is not just about reading or getting ready for, knowing these alphabet letters and getting all worked up if they don't know this or they don't know that. It's not about that. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. So we're preparing. We want you to prepare your child for entrance into primary one. And you know what? I have a secret to tell you. They've been preparing all their life for this moment, all their life. We just saw how brain development is pretty much 95% or just under that by age 5. And so that brain has been working very hard to be ready or to prepare for this giant step into the world of school. And so it's very important to remember that children are developing on a continuum. That means that all the children coming into P1 are going to be at different levels, stages of development. There are going to be some that are quite social and quite verbal and can talk up a storm. There are going to be others that may even be readers. However, some of those maybe readers may be the same children that cry as soon as someone wants to share a toy with them. And so we are remembering that children, when they come into school, they're not in little pieces, they're a whole child, and we are working with whole children. So what I want, I've already talked about relationships and preparedness, but I want to encourage parents to remember that there is a purpose behind reading. There is a purpose for reading. We just don't want children to arbitrarily be able to read. There's a reason. And that reason lies in language and in communication. And so what I want to share with you this evening is in preparing your child for the journey in primary school is to ensure that they have rich experiences. Get away from the iPad and the tablets, take them outside, go on journeys, engage in the beach, meet family. And then as they're moving about, allow them to ask questions. And you answer and you talk, it's back and forth because their brains are engaged, and relationships are what are forming the foundation to the reading. Now, we have speaking and listening, and we have reading and writing. And so tonight we're talking about reading. And what I want you to be able to do over the summer is to journal with your children. This is the one thing you're going to hear a lot of things. Remember this one first. Journal with your children. And now journaling is about experiences. And so what you would do is enjoy an experience, emphasize, talk about whatever it is with your experience. It could be a picnic. It could be going to the grocery store, whatever it is. You can have your child draw their experience. They don't even have to write. They can just draw a picture. It could be squiggles, and they can tell you about it. They can take photos about their experience. And then you want it to be in some kind of order. So you're going to write down, and you can be the scribe, and this is where they're going to see the connection between reading and writing. Their experience is coded into these squiggles that we can recall back, and we're communicating about our experience. So when we go to grandma or auntie, oh, guess what? I can tell you about this, or they can send their story online or what have you. So you want them to write what they recall. You want to help them with ordering their thoughts. You know, what happened first when we went XYZ? Next, then, in the end, or last. Help them to summarize the experience. How did it make you feel? And then, plan for the next time. So hopefully, just this little blurb is a commercial to encourage you to enjoy and have fun as you prepare your child for primary one, for learning to read. If they already can read and write, then you just meet them where they are. And our teachers will want to know when your children come into P1, how was your summer? What did you do? Tell me about it. And they can even have some references. So
This is absolutely wonderful, Mrs. Bucci, the whole idea of journaling. That is fabulous. And Mrs. Trott, as education officer for early childhood and special education, do you have something what's readiness from your perspective, and what tips do you have to add? Unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to share with parents that I want over the summer for them to play and enjoy their children. They're going to get enough teaching and learning done at school with their classroom teacher. So when you hear my tips, I want you to think of having fun with your child over the summer. I'm not asking parents to sit with their children at the dining room table and learn their name and go through the letters, and every night they're doing letter sounds. We don't need that, because if you prepare your children with these tips I'm about to share with you, they will be prepared for that P1 classroom. So I'll start with reading with your child for 10 to 15 minutes. I don't want you to just read a story, but I want you to talk to your child about the story. Oh, what happened in the beginning of that story? They're learning the vocabulary. They're putting themselves in that story. And so I want you to ask some questions like, who's your favorite character? Where was that story? Where did that story take place? I want you to have those enriching conversations with your child, because believe me, it helps the teacher when they come into the classroom, because the teachers will ask them those questions. So they'll be a little familiar with those questions and be able to raise their hand and say, I know the answer to that. My mommy asks me that question, or my dad, or my guardian. And so that's my first tip. Read to your child for 10 to 15 minutes a night and ask them loads of questions from that story. The next one is exploring. Now, some you would have to pay for, and Ms. Pearman's going to share a place where you can go that I didn't know about. I'm going to leave that for her. But I want you to explore with your child. I want you to take them to the aquarium. Of course, that's a fee unless you're a member. But I also want you to go on the trails, go on the railway trails and talk about the flowers and the plants, because your child in P1 is going to learn about Bermuda plants. And so you're giving them that first exposure to a hibiscus or a cedar tree. And the teacher is going to appreciate that when they enter the classroom, because they'll be able to answer some of those questions. They can draw those pictures of what a cedar tree is. They'll learn those words around in depth. You know, they will learn all about the cedar tree, but you're gonna first expose them as the child's first teacher. So going to the beach, making things with sand, it's really helping them when they go to school. I can't stress that enough, because going to the beach and making stuff like a sandcastle. Now, I don't know how to do all of that, but I know you need a bucket and a shovel. And I know most parents have buckets and shovels with children, and you fill it with sand and water and you do your creation. And so you get to talk about creating that sandcastle or even ladders in the sand. I mean, it's so much you can do at the beach, and that's a free activity. Also, when you go to different places, talk about same and different, because they're going to learn that in school. So if you say, well, what's the difference between this hibiscus and this oleander? It could be the size, the color, the shapes of the petals, sorry. All of that comes into play for your child's learning. So that's my second tip, explore. My third tip is cooking. Sometimes we're so busy on a weeknight. I can't imagine being a parent and being busy that you don't have time to cook. So I'm not talking about when you've had your long day at work, coming home and having to cook with your child. But if you're off on a Saturday or Sunday, let them be a part of your cooking Sunday routine. And so you can make things, and what you're teaching your child, is measurement. They're going to learn measurement in P1. But I don't want you him saying, this is a cup and this is a quarter of a cup. I'm not saying to do that. But you can tell your child, what's on that cup? It's a 1/4. Yes, that means that's a quarter of a cup. Our recipe to make bread says a quarter cup of sugar. And so you're helping them with those experiences of cooking. Have a few more if you can just hold on a little bit longer. I want you to help your child share and take turns with your child. You'll be amazed at how that also helps your child in school. They have to learn to be able to share and take turns, because they're going to be in a class of 15 other children or more, and they're going to have to wait their turn. And so you're going to help the teacher in that way, and that your child is ready for those kind of experiences, because they're going to know how to wait their turn. You might hear some people talking about self-regulation. And so with self-regulation is how your child deals with their emotions. And so they may not get their own way and they may cry, and it's okay, but it's how we deal with them so that they can get over it and move on as a little 5-year-old. And you know, they're still learning about emotions, so sadness, and he took my toy. And so at home, you can start having those conversations, read some stories about starting school or emotions when you're sad, when you're happy, when you're excited. The other thing I'd like you to do is, before your child starts school, like Ms. Bucci said, take them to the school grounds, not when school's in, because we know we're having bubbles, but say, oh, you're going to be going there in September. I heard your teacher's name is Carmelita Trott. Oh, Miss Trott, sorry, we didn't do the first name, Miss Trott. And I wonder what kinds of things you're going to be doing in Miss Trott's class. Oh, I can't wait. Are you excited about school? So you're going to have those conversations with your child. You're going to tell them what to expect when it's drop off. I'm going to drop you off, but I'm not going to be able to come in your classroom. That's getting them ready for that emotional connection of leaving them at the door, because they're not going to be able to come in. When I was a P1 teacher, the parents were excited about coming into my classroom to see where their child's locker is, their table is. What are you going to do first with my child? Well, because of COVID, we can't do that. So it's going to be little different protocols that you have to follow when you drop off your child. And just a few more, I want you to help your child with bedtime routines. That's going to help your child as well, because they're going to learn, this is what I do every night. I clean my teeth, I get my bath, I put on my pajamas, mommy reads me a story, and I go to sleep. And so those are things that help make those connections for children with routines. And extra things you can do, sing nursery rhymes, counting. If you're going to somewhere like in the mall, you can go ahead in the mall and count all those steps in Washington Mall. One way of getting them to row count without making them, you know, sit at that dining room table, say, count to 10. You got to learn how to count to 10. Come on, count to 10. Oh, you keep messing up on 5. Just walk up the steps in the mall or wherever you have steps in your house and just go along and just say, we're going to count, so they know what you're doing. And they may not know 5, 6, and 7, but that's okay, because they're going to learn them in school. I want you to count your everyday items at home. So you go, I think my time is almost up, but your everyday items at home, I want you to count items such as you're getting ready for dinner. It's 3 of you, get me 3 forks and 3 spoons or 3 cups, 3 plates, whatever you're doing. Get the ketchup out of the fridge if you're having French fries and chicken nuggets. Whatever you're doing, they can even help you serve those chicken nuggets. We're getting 3 each. You're making sure your children give each person 3. No one gets more than 3 because that's what we have for dinner. So those kinds of fun things. Buy some Play-Doh. I know you want to keep your houses clean, but that Play-Doh definitely helps your child with their fine motor skills. Cut with scissors. They love to cut with scissors. So use those scissors, snipping the newspaper, magazines, anything you want. Button and zipper. Help your child to begin learning how to button and zipper their pants, their jackets, or their school bag, their lunch containers. All that is preparing them for school. 2 more. Play board games with your child. You know, we have Hi-Yo, Cheerio games, snakes and ladders. That also enforcing this counting without you actually again sitting at the table saying, come on, you need to count. But you're playing in a fun way, a board game. So you can get a board game. And my last one, I promise I've talked enough, is pretend play. Do that tea party, girls or boys, have that tea party, dress up. I mean, I've had little cousins and godchildren who have dressed all up and enjoy that whole pretend play experience because they're not themselves. They're Miss Fancy Lady with the pearls or the necklaces or the earrings. And so children really enjoy that, and their imagination connects them to writing stories that they're going to do in P1. I don't want you to try to write a story at home, but getting them ready with the language to put on paper for the stories. I promise you that's my last thing. Thank you.
Wow. I started to take notes so I could recap everything that you said. But instead of doing that, I'm going to just tell everybody that we're recording this. And so you will be able to access this presentation on YouTube. I mean, these suggestions are absolutely fabulous. I'm going to move to Ms. Latoya Pearman now as a parent. And because Ms. Trott mentioned her name, let's hear from Ms. Pearman from the parent and PTA and former librarian's perspective.
All right, great. Thank you, Dr. Tweed. We've already heard about all the things we can do as parents, the activities and things like that. I just want to talk about how we can support our students, not in teaching, as Ms. Trott has made it very clear, not worrying about reading and alphabet and numbers. That will come when they're ready for it to come, but just how we can prepare them emotionally, socially, physically to be ready for school. So I did a little bit of thinking about how parents can support their children towards school readiness. And I found a really great organization called the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And they had a really rich resource section for families and one specific to school readiness. And the tagline at the top said, school readiness is not a state of knowledge, but a state of mind. And that really struck me because it's not about what they know and if they're reading or not, if they're struggling, but are they ready for school? So I thought about how do we as parents get our kids in that right state of mind? For me, in my experience, number 1 is being positive. Number 2, I would say, is social emotional health and awareness as parents about where our children are and where we need to take them with our support. And finally, physical fitness. It can't be discounted for P1. So first and foremost, be positive about school and learning. Students who are excited and engaged with school and whose parents support them in that are always going to do better overall. It doesn't matter the challenge, the difficulty, the school, the teacher, the whatever. If they are excited and they are engaged and their parents are the same, whatever issue arises can be dealt with and addressed. So I would encourage the parents on here tonight to be positive. Always stay positive. Within earshot of your child, always positive about learning and teaching, teachers, principals, school, just as a rule. But I also want to touch on that your 4 or 5-year-old at present has very little life experience. And with only 4 or 5 years, they have experienced a great deal of their life in a global pandemic. And it's been hard for all of us. So what I would say to parents is to go easy, take it easy, do what works, keep it positive, keep it moving. That's all we can do. So when we think about the challenges we've all had in the last year and a half, I would say encourage your children in their social and emotional health by allowing them to not only feel all of their emotions, even the messy ones, but to recognize, identify, and talk about those emotions. The most challenging thing I found is when children they just haven't been given the resources or the words even to express themselves. So as parents, we can really help them in giving them the words and the tools, the framework really to deal with those emotions. And that's going to be essential for P1 and going forward. And another big thing I always like to encourage for parents is social awareness and what Ms. Trott has already talked about, experiences, right? So as children get ready to go into school, they're going to start asking those big questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Where's Bermuda? What's education? Why am I learning this? Who's my teacher? And first, and for me, what is my responsibility as a student? That's the question I want to ask, what I want my children to ask and to be able to answer. So it's never too early to encourage your children to recognize and respect authority, not only in your home, but in their classrooms and in the wider community. It only serves them well to know who's who, teacher, special education teacher, custodian, who everybody is and what their job is and what their responsibility is to you and what your responsibility is to them. So I always encourage parents in that regard. Don't discount making sure they know who is who and what their role is. And finally, physical fitness. I've had 3 P1s, and I can tell you that first month of P1 is rough. There will be tears, there will be exhaustion, there will be, they're just a mess for a while. It's hard work physically. So I say you take this summer, where it's going to be still fairly relaxed for some of us, not a lot of things going on. Get out into Bermuda. Beaches, parks, trails, things like that. Get them out, get them walking, get them moving, because that P1, that first little bit is just going to be tough. When they do that first cross-country run in October, November, they're going to feel it. So just give them that opportunity to be ready for that. And in light of the physical fitness, I just wanted to mention what Ms. Trott was talking about. I had mentioned on a radio interview a website called geocaching. And there are over 230 hidden geocaches in Bermuda. You can just go to the website or download a free app, and it just tells you where they are in Bermuda. And you can take your kids out and they use your phone's GPS to get out there and find it. You can open it up, you sign your name on a log, you can take something out. People leave gifts. You can leave your own little gift. I get stuff from the party store to leave back in if we take something out. And it's just a real opportunity to get them out, walking, giving them a goal, because sometimes you just don't want to take a walk, you want to go. But yeah, giving them something to shoot for. If we don't find a geocache on occasion, we have to go back. My kids are like, no, we have to find it. We didn't get it this time, but we have to come back another day and look for it. So it's nice. It's a nice little goal-oriented outdoor activity. So just to recap, I just want parents to remain positive, to support their child's social, emotional health and awareness, and to get them physically ready. And just one final thought I want you to have is that our children's life experiences will predict our outcomes, not our expectations. So we have to put in the work to get the result that we want as parents and the result that they deserve as children. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. That is so profound. Their life experiences will dictate their path and not our expectations. I just added Seek to the apps on my phone on the basis of what someone said in the chat here. And it is an app that Stephanie Hollis, who gave us that information, that allows you to take pictures of plants and animals around Bermuda and identify them. And I walk a lot, and I actually need that app. That sounds really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And now I'm going to ask our acting reading officer, Kim Anderson, to share her perspective of school readiness and
Thank you, Dr. Curtis Tweed. I am going to be very brief because you have heard from the real experts, and for me, the penultimate expert on our panel is still to come. So I would like to give a quick recap of some of the main points that I've heard from our panelists so far that really resonated with me. The predictors for learning how to read is language. It is natural for us as humans to speak and to listen. So we need to practice both our speaking and listening skills, and our children can do that by having those conversations, whether it's answering or asking questions about the books that they read, or those nature walks, or which box on the shelf do we want to get for our cereal this week. All of those types of questions enhance later reading skills. The other thing that I've heard and is reinforced, and the main message for today, is that for our students to be ready for primary school, they just need to turn up to primary school. They have to get to school, and they need to come on a regular basis, because it is up to the teacher to take them from where they are. So the main point for what I would like to share this evening is, I just want to give you parents a heads up. We do a lot of tests with our P1 children early in their school year. That is so that we can see where they are. So there are several different assessments that we do, but the best thing about a reading test is there is no preparation. It's how you do on the time in that day. And if you've had a rough morning, well, guess what? Something else is going to catch on later. So you can get a good picture of the child and see along the way. So we do not take one test score as being the be all and end all in determining the life trajectory of a child. So while it might seem like a lot, you will get that information, and we do it for a reason. And the different assessments that we use are to complement one another and build a picture of the child. So one of the tests that we do, it actually has already been done at preschool. So we have an idea of where your child is coming into P1, and the P1 teacher will have an idea of what they can already do in terms of how they hear language, pronounce language, and can start to think about reading, doing that journaling piece like Mrs. Bucci shared, which for P1s, drawing the picture, but being able to talk about it. It's that innate skill. So you will have seen all of the panelists' heads and big smiles all the way along. So I'm now going to hand over to Ms. McKees Gilbert, P1 teacher of Elliott Primary.
Yes, Ms. Gilbert.
Yes, good evening again, everyone. I'm actually going to touch on a lot of the points that have already been mentioned this evening, but repetition deepens the impression, and it goes to show how important the points mentioned before are to a P1 classroom teacher. I just want to acknowledge some of the things that I read in the chat before I get started. And one of the things was, I'm not sure if it was a parent, I think it was a parent that celebrated a teacher and their child's experience. And Ms. Manderson responded with, teachers are only able to build on the foundation that parents provide. So thank you too. And that part is very, very important, because many times when children are coming into a P1 classroom, they're really stressed about, oh, my child doesn't know all their letters. Oh, they don't know all of this. And in all honesty, the points that have been touched on this evening are some of the most important. And I'll tell you why from a teacher's perspective. So the conversation piece is very important, because as we change our style of education, we're looking to be more collaborative, more creative, have more critical thinking amongst our students, and conversation is vital to that. Okay, so that conversation piece is so important, because when they come in and they talked about journaling and writing, we don't need them necessarily writing when they come in. All right. When we were learning how to write, we were given prompts and we had to write strictly on that prompt. And that was my whole writing experience as a P1 student. And education has changed from that. We want our children to write about what they know. Okay. And what they know about are the things you talk about and all of those experiences. So I'm going to put that under one big umbrella, was two umbrellas really, conversations and experiences. When they come into the classroom, they are not, most times are not able to write. Okay, we're working with what they can talk about. So we always start with oral stories, Those oral stories are going to be based on the experiences that you have had with them and shared with them at home. So those oral stories are very, very important. So you can have conversation with them, but also practice just telling a story about what you did. When they come into our classroom, we do a lot of interactive read aloud. So it's not just them passively sitting. I pause through the book and I model thinking about that book to encourage their comprehension. And then I have them pause right in the middle of the book and turn and talk about it. Children who talk at home with their parents feel like what they have to say matters. You've already boosted the confidence and their ability to share. If you have conversations with them at home, they're more likely to be able to converse with their peers, which is very important because right from day one, we do a lot of turn and talk and a lot of collaborative exercises. And so we know that there are some people who are natural talkers and some people who, it's not that they don't know anything, but are not so natural, but if they're conversing at home with you, we tend to get a little bit more out of even those shy ones. Vocabulary is very, very important. When they have all these rich experiences and being able to describe them, it helps when they are able to tell stories, because when I start wanting to build on what they're telling and I want just to get them to describe it a little bit more, it's not enough just to go to the beach. Talk about how that sand feels, or how the water feels, or how it feels when they got hit by a wave. Talk about when you go to the grocery store, many times we're rushing. That is an awesome place for a lot of conversation, a lot of rich experience, and using the scale to measure things, feeling different fruits and vegetables. We all have the fruits and vegetables that we like. I'm an experimenter, so looking at things that are unusual, finding dragon fruit that, we only had in the country a couple years ago. Prior to that, it's definitely a Chinese fruit, but having them feel how spongy it is and just experimenting with things by, if you can, purchasing it and opening it up and looking at it and comparing the taste of different fruits, because they explore the world through their 5 senses. So as you're doing these different experiences, make sure that you're talking about it. And we also want to encourage you to be okay with them getting dirty in their exploration. When they're cooking, I know it's not convenient for them to spill the milk or the eggs or all of those types of things because food is getting more expensive. However, when they get to do that, they have the freedom and they feel comfortable with you and they bring all those experiences to the classroom. And if they make a mistake, just have them clean it up, because they are going to make mistakes in the classroom. And the part is, that's how they learn. Maybe I won't be so rough with the egg the next time, or maybe I won't be so, I'll be able to manage the pouring a little bit better. Also, I took a lot of notes as people were talking about, because they touched on many things. I want to go off on Ms. Pearman when she was talking about the geocaching. And that's important because there's so much math in geocaching, even though they may not be able to manage the app. I've done geocaching and it's a lot of fun and it's very addictive. But in the geocaching app, they actually tell you how many steps in which direction you need to go. So you can have them counting those steps and then teaching them the directions. They may not get it the first time, but that's okay because you're incorporating that. Back to conversation really quickly. Make sure your children know about who you are as a person, who you are as their parent, not just as their provider and someone who loves them and kisses them up, but do they know your name? I let my students know that my first name is McKees. They know that they cannot call me McKees because I'm also teaching them the point of respect. But it's a connection. They get excited when I make those connections with them and I share my life with them, my likes, my dislikes, touching on something Ms. Pearman said, making sure that as they're experiencing things that you're teaching them about the names for feelings and that all feelings are okay. But that you follow it up with how to handle those feelings, because they are going to encounter those feelings when they come into primary one. What happens when a child doesn't share with them? It's really easy to call the teacher and fuss about that, but it helps a lot if you talk to them in terms of how to solve those problems as opposed to solving every single problem for them. We give them the tools to solve the problem. I'm big on independence. I'm big on teaching them how to solve their problems so that we can do less of it and we could just facilitate. But they can only do that if they've had a rich exposure to, it's okay to be angry. I get angry. And then not leave it there, but tell them how you actually deal with your frustrations and in a productive way, and encourage them to try some of those steps, right? Reading often. I am passionate about reading. I cannot say it enough. Read, read, read. First, I want you to read a variety of materials. a variety, not just the picture books that we have for students. They have lots of children's magazines. If it's not available because they're too pricey, the library has them. They have children's magazines. Read poems to them. Let them see things out of the newspaper that's appropriate for their age level. Read fiction, read nonfiction, whatever you love to read. Make sure that you're telling that they see you reading also, because it's contagious. When they see you doing something, it's easier to get them to want to do it, because modeling is so important. It's very hard to get a child to want to read if they don't see the reason or the necessity for it. Oh, my mom reads too, and I saw her laughing in this book, because reading opens doors and they don't even have to go anywhere. They can be a princess, they can go to jungles, they can travel to faraway places, and it's awesome. And that's especially needed during this COVID time when we're so, I don't want to say trapped, but just confined and restricted. So this is so important for you to do that, to open these doors for them. Read a lot, read as much as you possibly can. And again, make sure that they're seeing you read. I had some other things about reading. Don't be so, I want to go back to what Ms. Pearman said in terms about being positive. If you're positive about reading, let's say you struggled as a child reading, and this goes for all subjects. If you feel the need to share your struggles with learning with your child, that's fine. But you make sure that you follow it up with how you overcame and how you worked at it. Because many times if parents say, oh, I struggled in math, and they leave it there, that sends a message, believe it or not, to your child. Oh, I don't enjoy reading, it's just too much. That sends a message to your child. And then they don't believe that they can do it. And belief in themselves is half the battle. If they believe that they can read, even if before they're doing it, that's very important. So let's see, encourage healthy struggle. So when they come in initially, they're going to do all their storytelling orally. Then they're going to get into drawing their stories. And then they're going to get into writing it as they learn more, because we're teaching it about their letters, their sounds, words, and then the mechanics of writing. Make sure that you're passionate about their writing and that it's an enjoyable experience for them as well. Many times we want to correct every single error that they make. And as a teacher, we can actually see who experiences that versus the person who's who's encouraged in a healthy way to do their writing and to be allowed and allowing them to make mistakes and being okay with inventive spelling, because they're actually showing us what they do know, not being so quick to tell children every single thing. Oh, this is how you spell it. They don't learn that way. They learn that way by using what they know, and then us gently choosing one thing at a time that we focus on and go with it from that perspective, and just go easy on them. A lot of times, if they are worried about the mechanics of writing, then all that wonderful work that you have done in giving them the experiences to write about, giving them the conversation to have the language, freezes and they suffer paralysis. So we want to encourage just a healthy struggle. There's a healthy struggle to learning, and being in communication with your child's teacher when you are concerned about things, because many times they'll say, oh no, this is normal and this is developmental and this is how we're going to work together to solve that. Let's see, Ms. Carmelita Trott spoke on routine. That's very, very important, especially because it's a big transition from preschool to a primary one classroom. Like I told you, we really stress independence. We have strict morning routines where they mark their own attendance. They come in, they're required to do specific things in the morning to get them started on their day. Routine is important, because even though it may seem constricting to a person who's spontaneous, routine for children allows them to know what's coming next. And when they know what's coming next, they feel more in charge and more in control, and they say, okay, you know what, I can handle this. Because they're aware. Oh, sorry, I've gone over my time.
No, it's not that at all. But if you just made that point, there was a question in the chat. A parent, I think, wanted to know, what do you do? How do you deal with a child who isn't really ready to leave preschool? What do you say to that?
Well, it is a big change. The first thing I would do is ask if there's any of their students any of their classmates who are going to their same school. That helps a lot if they know that some of their peers are going. What they talked about already, taking them to the school, showing them what it's like. I know I don't want to encourage you to infringe upon a teacher's summer vacation, but reach out to the teacher. You'll be surprised at how willing teachers are to have a quick Zoom meeting just so your child can see them, because technically that's all we can do with this. So I would encourage that. just really, really talking to them, making sure you go to the school, see what it's like, and just consistently talk with them. It is a big jump. They don't have naps. So start physically preparing them for those types of things. Have them write questions or videos or things that they may want to share with their new teacher. I have my students make personal dictionaries about their lives. And the parents are the ones who actually do it, but it allows me to have something to start off with and to talk with them about initially, right from the beginning of the school year. Some teachers will do a little survey, what is your child's likes and different things like that, so that they can connect and say, oh, I like that too. You know, that's the most that I could recommend at this particular point, considering that, you know, we do have the pod situation where they're not able to come into school right now while it's open and see. But definitely talk with the child, see if you could set up a virtual meeting with the child's teacher, and as much reading about moving to a new school. There are lots of videos about moving to a new school and just talking about the different changes, and maybe even sharing some of your personal experiences with some of the major changes that you have to make, because they need to see that you are relatable too. When my children come into my classroom, I have a picture of me at their age, and they're like, whoa, because sometimes they don't believe that I was their age too, and that I experienced all the things that they experienced. And you would be surprised at how that simple thing helps us to have a relationship and just helps us to, you know, to bond and to be able to address their issues, because a lot of times as adults,
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, those are great tips. Well,
Okay.
those are great tips. And Ms. Trott also mentioned taking your child past the school or to the school so that they can see what that is like and get kind of acclimated to being there. Ms. Trott, did you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to say, because preschool is wonderful, but I would just talk with the child of how P1 is going to be wonderful as well. Because sometimes I have parents who say, I don't want my child to leave preschool. I love the teacher. And I'm like, but you're going to love the next teacher too, because our P1 teachers love their children. It's like their own. And so the same love and nurturing and caring that you see in preschool, you'll get in P1. And so I would just talk, like Ms. Gilbert said, I would just talk with the child about new experiences. You know, you didn't know how to ride a bike and now you know how to ride a bike. Wouldn't it be as sad if you just didn't learn how to ride a bike? Well, you're going to learn some new things at school. And just like Ms. Gilbert said again, I mean, we're all on the same page of being relatable, you know, just letting them know your own experience of, you know, when I got a new job, say, for example, I was a little nervous going to this new job I had. And I had to meet new people, and I had to see what people liked in my area and how close I had to work with certain people. And, you know, I knew I had to get along with others. So if you can find, you know, driving, oh my goodness, when I had to learn how to drive, how scary that was. But thank goodness I learned how to drive, because I wouldn't have been able to take you to the grocery store, the park, the beach, you know, so just making them connect, because it's experiences that we've had, like Ms. Gilbert said, and I agree. Yeah. We can share with the children to let them know it's all about change without us really going into, we're all in change and you're going to have to accept this change, but giving them examples of how we have changed in our life. We weren't always what we are now.
We also have in the chat a question from Chelsea Walker, who would like to know if the panelists have any tips for parents who struggle with homework. And she says, as a parent, I'm easily frustrated with homework and I do not have much patience. I'm with you, mainly because of my experience. Come September, I will have a P5, a P1, and a newborn. Any tips?
Wow.
I also feel home time should be family time and not hours spent on homework. What do we have to say, panelists?
I
would like
to
to
jump in
that one.
Latoya, I mean, Ms. Pearman?
As a parent of 3 children and 3 lots of homework, I would not spend hours on homework. I would set a time that you're going to work on that, be it 30 minutes, maybe a little longer with the P5. And when that time is up, that time is up. That's my suggestion.
And I would just share, in the public school system, children have only so many minutes we're supposed to be actually giving children homework. So P1 teachers know how much time a child should spend on homework. And mom, it should really be something that the teacher has taught and that the child knows how to do. And so it's not where you should be actually stressing or getting all upset about, because the child actually should be able to sit at the table and get out their pen and paper, and should be able to sit there with, of course, mom or dad or whoever's guidance saying, you know, are you finished number 1? Well, let's go on to number 2, because sometimes They're just young. They need that prompting to move on to the next one. And so we need to just remember those sorts of things. And our teachers know in the public school system that each child is only supposed to have, like in P1, I can't remember, but like no more than 15 minutes. And that can include a worksheet. It can include reading, and it could include learning 2 spelling words. But we have to remember that, Mom, I would never want you to be frustrated, because it, like Ms. Gilbert and Ms. Pearman said, your frustration turns out into the child. And so we want you to be positive. And if you've had enough, I would suggest you just write the parent, the parent, write the teacher a note and say, we had enough of homework tonight, and maybe you can send it again tonight, and I'll see how we can make out on it. It was too much, because we understand parents have more than one job. They're trying to run their household. They got dinner to cook, dishes to wash, you know, putting the child bathing, putting the child to bed. And so we just have to remember that. And us as educators in the public school system, I can only talk because I've only worked in public, but we know what the expectations are. And so if you're frustrated, it's an opportunity to talk with the teacher and say, hey, I just want to remind you that I have 3 children, like Ms. Pearman. I have 3 children, and I can do 30 minutes of homework on each child, because by the time that hour and a half is over, I'm exhausted and I haven't washed dishes. I haven't planned tomorrow. I've got to iron the children's work clothes, iron the children's school clothes and stuff like that. So
One thing you said there, Ms. Trott, was to communicate with the teacher. And in the chat box, Jessica Miners was saying that to let the teacher know if the child had challenges with, I think she was talking about transitioning from preschool into P1. And I totally agree with that, but that notion of communicating with the teacher is key. And I have to admit, I was one of those who, before a new school year would start, I would take my child to meet that teacher, you know, so that that child would have that level of knowledge moving in. But communicating with the teacher is vitally important. We are actually.
I guess my 2 cents as a middle school teacher, I used to tell my students all the time, I love it when you make a mistake. And of course, they looked at me like I was crazy, but I said it over and over and over again. I said, because that tells me what you need next. That tells me what I have to do. You make my life easier. And I'm not trying to teach you something that you already know. You're not getting bored, and we're getting on to where we are. It doesn't help for children to come to school with perfect homework, which happens all the way through the time, because the teacher does not know what the student is or is not able to do. So if a student is not able to do something on their own, the teacher definitely needs to know that.
Thank you for that, Ms. Manderson. We are actually out of time. It's now 7:37, but I would like to know if there was anybody in our audience who had any other questions. Did you have any other questions for the panelists? Okay, I don't think there are any other questions, but you know, panelists, I think that we could have gone on for much longer than an hour, and your suggestions and tips are so wonderful. You know, the whole notion, and people repeated the same thing, and I think that drives home the point. Be positive, take care of your children's socio-emotional health, make sure they're engaged in physical fitness, take them exploring. And I heard that you can also explore in the supermarket, right? And look at the different kind of fruits and vegetables, take them home, cut them up. This is wonderful. And journaling, Ms. Bucci, I love that idea. And we can also use the geocaching, we can use Seek. Read to your children. Take them exploring, go to the beach, go to the supermarket, go on the bike trail, the walking trail, help them, have them cook with you, teach them about same and different, help them learn how to share. That was a big deal in my household. But take turns and share. Those things are so important. And also do some things with them that will help them with self-regulating activities. And take them to the school so they can see where it is they're going. You guys, panelists, are all absolutely awesome. And this has been fabulous. And the final note there is, please remember that the evenings are winding down in family time, which we're actually infringing on a little bit with our presentation, but we appreciate your participation, panelists and audience. We will have this video up on YouTube, So if you'd like to go back and take a look at it, so you can get all of those wonderful suggestions, especially the list of, I counted, well, I got up to 8 with Ms. Trott. So, you know, there are a lot of things there. Thank you all so much for your participation, and stay tuned because there will be another reading literacy event. Thank you so much. There will also be a survey that will come out to you, unfortunately a little bit delayed in a couple of weeks. So when you get it, please do respond. We're anxious to know from you what other things you'd like to hear about. So again, thank you so much and have a good evening. Panelists, you can stay on for just a minute after.
Thanks.